In the early 1950s, Allis Chalmers generated more revenue than IBM. Here's what you need to know about business empires. They don't start where you think they do. Every great company solves a problem nobody else can solve. Get this right? You build a dynasty. Get it wrong? You're forgotten before you start. Allis Chalmers got it right. For 50 years. The solution: innovation. Through combination. In 1901, America was changing fast. Factories needed power. Mines needed equipment. Farms needed machines. But no single company could do it all. Edward P. Allis built steam engines and flour mills. Fraser and Chalmers made mining equipment. Neither company was struggling, but they saw something bigger. They merged, not because they were failing, because they were smart. The new company had everything: steam power know-how, mining knowledge, big factories, but they still weren't in farming. That changed in 1914. Stop right there. You're thinking they bought a tractor company because they loved farming. Wrong. They bought the Monarch Tractor Company to make more money. Sound familiar? This is where their destruction started, in their very first win. But here's what's crazy about Allis Chalmers. They didn't just buy companies. They revolutionized entire industries, starting with something nobody thought would work. In 1932, while competitors laughed, Allis Chalmers partnered with Firestone. They put aircraft tires on tractors. The 1932 Model U, low-pressure pneumatic tires. Everyone said it wouldn't work. In 1933, the Model WC became the first tractor to come standard with rubber tires. Picture this: state fairs across America. Allis Chalmers is racing their orange tractors against steel-wheeled competition. Same load. But the orange tractor gets 8.18 horsepower hours per gallon. Steel wheels, 5.62 horsepower per gallon. That's a 45% improvement. The farmers aren't just impressed, they're converted. But rubber tires were just the beginning. Allis Chalmers was about to unleash a decade of innovations that would shame their competitors. In 1948, power adjustable rear wheels on the Model WD, first in the industry. In 1961, first turbocharged agricultural tractor, the Model D19 diesel. 1929, Persian orange paint scheme, instant brand recognition. Technical dominance, the D-Series success. The D-Series tractors from 1957 became probably the most popular series Allis Chalmers ever sold. Models D10 through D21. They dominated the 1960s. The Model WC, over 178,000 units were built. One of the top 10 best-selling tractors ever made. Think of Allis Chalmers like Apple in the early days. They weren't the biggest, but they had the best technology. Farmers didn't buy orange tractors because they were cheap. They bought them because they worked better. By 1955, Allis Chalmers held 10.3% of the U.S. wheel tractor market. They were the third or fourth largest farm equipment maker in America. They were bigger than IBM, larger than 3M and Coca-Cola combined. But success was about to become their biggest enemy. By the 1950s, Allis Chalmers had learned something dangerous. Innovation plus variety equals massive profit. They were about to test that theory on a scale that would ultimately destroy them. What happened next would turn their greatest strength into their fatal weakness. The arrogance of success. 1955 to 1970. When you're bigger than IBM, you start thinking you can do anything. Build tractors? Easy. Build air conditioners? Why not? Build dirt bikes? Sure. Allis Chalmers was about to learn why focus beats variety every single time. Here's the trap that kills successful companies. Success makes you think you're invincible. When with tractors, you must be able to win with everything else. This thinking destroyed more American companies than foreign competition ever did. Because it's not just wrong, it's backwards. Companies that survived knew one thing: excellence isn't transferable, focus isn't optional. Allis Chalmers was about to ignore both lessons. The problem: conglomerate fever. Wall Street loved diversified companies, lower risk, higher stock prices, unlimited growth potential, construction equipment, power generation systems, mining machinery, lawnmowers, chainsaws. If it had an engine, Allis Chalmers wanted to build it. Revenue exploded. By the late 1970s, they hit $2.5 to $3 billion annually. That's $10.8 to $13 billion in today's money. They became a conglomerate before the word was coined. But here's where arrogance crept in. While John Deere was building bigger, more powerful tractors, Allis Chalmers stuck with their 1930s economy tractor philosophy. They were building good, affordable machines. The market wanted power and features. Allis Chalmers executives convinced themselves they knew better than their customers. They kept building economy tractors when farmers wanted horsepower. Meanwhile, John Deere and International Harvester were building bigger machines, getting more market share. AC's response? We build quality, not just power. The market disagreed. Here's what should have terrified them. By the 1970s, farm equipment was becoming a smaller slice of their business. They were making more money from construction equipment and power generation than from the tractors that built their reputation. But their engineering budget was spread across dozens of products. You know what John Deere was doing? Perfecting farming. Just farming. Think of it like a restaurant. You start making the best pizza in town. Customers love it. Lines around the block. Then you add burgers. Then Chinese food. Then Mexican. Then sushi. Pretty soon, you're not making the best pizza anymore. You're making everything acceptable. And your customers go somewhere else for good pizza. That's what happened to Allis Chalmers. They went from making the best tractors to making acceptable tractors, while making acceptable everything else. By the 1960s, something troubling was happening. Dealers were complaining that Allis Chalmers had no sense of timing when it came to product development and did not appear to be listening to dealers. They were developing expensive new equipment at exactly the wrong moments in economic cycles. But management wasn't listening. Here's how bad their timing became. They'd release new products just as economic cycles turned down. Developed expensive equipment just as farmers tightened their belts. It's like launching a luxury car during a recession, over and over again. By 1970, Allis Chalmers was making billions from dozens of products. They employed 30,000 Americans. They had plants around the world. On paper, they looked unstoppable. But in America's fields, farmers were starting to notice something troubling. Orange tractors weren't keeping up with green ones, and that was about to become a very expensive problem. The beginning of the end, 1970 to 1980. Success can blind you to failure. By 1979, Allis Chalmers hit record sales of $1.973 billion. They were celebrating in boardrooms. They should have been preparing for disaster. Here's the brutal truth about business cycles. When they turn fast. And companies that are spread too thin get hit hardest. While Allis Chalmers executives were managing dozens of product lines across multiple industries, economic storm clouds were gathering. Storm clouds they were too busy to notice. You can't be excellent at everything. Management attention isn't unlimited. Every dollar spent on dirt bikes was a dollar not invested in tractors. The farm equipment market was evolving. Farmers wanted bigger, more sophisticated machines. Better dealer support, stronger financing, quality problems, dealer complaints, market share erosion. Wait, here's what makes this tragic. Allis Chalmers was still building innovative equipment. Good equipment. Their 8000 series tractors were excellent machines that would go drawbar to drawbar with anything. But they couldn't support them properly. Marketing was spread too thin. Dealer networks were neglected. Service suffered. Great products. Terrible execution. Here's how fast they lost the farm market. 1955, 10.3% of U.S. wheel tractor market. 1970, down to single digits. 1979, even smaller slice, despite record revenues. They were making more money, but losing the market that made them famous. By the late 1970s, Allis Chalmers was generating massive revenue, but farm equipment was becoming a smaller percentage of their business. They had become a construction and power generation company that happened to make tractors. Meanwhile, John Deere was becoming the tractor company. Think of John Deere like McDonald's. They do one thing really well: burgers, or in Deere's case, farm equipment. They perfect it. They dominate it. Allis Chalmers was like a restaurant that served burgers, pizza, Chinese food, Mexican food, and sushi. They were decent at everything, but excellent at nothing. When times got tough, customers went to specialists. Dealer complaints were mounting. Product timing was awful. Market share was slipping. But 1979, sales hit $1.973 billion, a record. Success was masking their problems, making them feel invincible. They were about to learn that record sales can't save you from strategic mistakes. The final profitable year, 1980, would be their last profitable year, $47.6 million in profit. After that, 7 straight years of losses. In 1980, Allis Chalmers executives thought they were too big to fail, too successful to struggle, too diversified to collapse. They were about to face the perfect storm and discover that being spread across multiple industries wasn't protection. It was vulnerability. The perfect storm hits, 1980 to 1987. When disaster strikes, it reveals everything. Who's strong, who's weak, who prepared, who got lucky. The 1980s farm crisis was about to test every agricultural company in America. Most would fail the test. Here's what you need to understand about the 1980s farm crisis. It wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic. Federal funds interest rates hit 21.5% in 1981. Land values in Iowa lost 60% between 1981 and 1986. 300,000 farms defaulted. The Soviet grain embargo caused exports to drop 20%. Every farm equipment company lost money, but some survived, others didn't. The difference wasn't luck, it was strategy. Nobody could predict 21.5% interest rates. When farmers can't get loans, they can't buy equipment. When land values crash, they can't use farms as collateral. What happened to competitors? International Harvester, near collapse, merged with Case. Massey Ferguson. Bankruptcy, later bought by AGCO. White Motor, failed completely. Equipment manufacturers lost over $200 million in 1982 alone. But here's where you see the difference between smart companies and arrogant ones. John Deere, despite facing the same crisis, stayed focused on farming, cut costs, supported dealers, survived. Allis Chalmers, they kept trying to do everything. Want to see arrogance in action? During bankruptcy proceedings, an Allis Chalmers CEO said they would most emphatically continue to do business, while filing for bankruptcy protection. That's not confidence. That's delusion. Being spread across multiple industries during a crisis meant they had problems everywhere. Construction equipment demand collapsed. Power generation sales fell. Recreational vehicle sales tanked. They should have focused on their core strengths. Sold off unrelated divisions. Consolidated around farming. Too little, too late. They didn't start major restructuring until 1983. In 1985, desperate for cash, Allis Chalmers sold their agricultural division to Deutz, a German company, for $107 million. They lost $153 million on the sale. But that wasn't the worst part. Deutz renamed the company Deutz Allis. They changed the iconic orange paint to green. Think about that. Orange tractors had been the company's identity since 1929. Farmers had emotional connections to that color. Brand loyalty built over decades. Deutz threw it all away. Imagine if McDonald's was bought by a company that changed the golden arches to blue squares, changed the name to Burger Palace, changed the menu to health food. That's what Deutz did to Allis Chalmers. They stripped away the identity farmers connected with. After the Deutz sale, dealer networks shrank, customer support weakened, brand loyalty evaporated, financial problems got worse. By 1987, Allis Chalmers couldn't even afford healthcare benefits for 8,000 UAW retirees. On June 29, 1987, they filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 30,000 jobs lost. The Milwaukee community was devastated. Dealers who had sold orange tractors for decades suddenly had nothing. The UAW called it historic mismanagement. In 1987, when Allis Chalmers filed for bankruptcy, something remarkable happened. Their innovations didn't die with them. The technology lived on. The brand scattered to the wind, and the lessons became warnings for every other American company. What survived the wreckage? 1987 to present. When a great company dies, something strange happens. The technology survives, the innovations spread, the lessons get forgotten, until it's time to learn them again. Here's what you need to understand about corporate death. The physical assets get sold. The technology gets absorbed. The people find new jobs. But the knowledge that built the company, that disappears forever. Understanding what happened to Allis Chalmers matters because it's happening right now, to companies you know, to industries you depend on. What actually survived? The technology. Every major Allis Chalmers innovation is still used today. Rubber tires on tractors, standard on every farm machine. Power steering. You can't buy a tractor without it. Turbochargers. Essential for modern farm equipment. Electronic monitoring. Foundation of precision agriculture. AGCO Corporation eventually acquired the legacy. The Allis Chalmers name occasionally appears on lawn tractors. Many became John Deere, Case, or New Holland dealers. They're still serving farmers, just wearing different colors. The innovations Allis Chalmers pioneered in the 1980s, they're now used by John Deere, Case, and New Holland. Variable transmission technology, electronic monitoring systems, climate-controlled cabs. Allis Chalmers didn't just build tractors. They built the future of farming. They just couldn't build a business to support it. Today, you can still find Allis Chalmers equipment working on farms across America. Some of it is 40 years old. Some are older. But it still works. Because the engineering was excellent. The irony? Their machines outlasted their company. Think of Allis Chalmers like the engineer who invented the smartphone but couldn't figure out how to market it. The technology was revolutionary. The engineering was superior. The innovation was real. But innovation without focus is just expensive research. The same thinking that built Allis Chalmers into a Fortune 500 company ultimately destroyed it. They confused being busy with being focused. They mistook variety for strength. They believed that if they could build great tractors, they could build great everything. They were wrong. This isn't ancient history. It's happening right now. American companies are making the same mistakes. Chasing growth through diversification. Ignoring core strengths for financial engineering. Believing that complexity equals sophistication. The pattern that killed Allis Chalmers is killing companies today, and most don't even know it. John Deere faced the same 1980s farm crisis, the same 21.5% interest rates, the same collapsing land values. But they stayed focused on farming, cut costs intelligently, supported dealers, maintained quality. They chose humility over arrogance, focus over diversification. They survived because they remembered what business they were actually in. From bigger than IBM and Coca-Cola combined to bankruptcy in 35 years, every piece of equipment Allis Chalmers built still works today, but the company that made them vanished. Why? Because they forgot that excellence in engineering means nothing without excellence in business. You can build the best tractors in the world, but if you can't focus, if you can't listen to your market, if you can't remember what business you're actually in, none of it matters. That's the lesson of Allis Chalmers. That's the warning every American business needs to hear. Excellence isn't enough. Focus is everything. The orange tractors disappeared from America's farms, not because they were inferior, but because the company that built them forgot how to be a tractor company. And that, more than any technology or innovation, is what killed America's greatest tractor dynasty.